G'day, I'm Mark Hoth and welcome to Swift Almanac. Today we are going to be looking at the most flexible view controller, the collection view controller. A collection view allows you to display a collection of user interface items repeatedly over the available area of your screen, both horizontally and vertically. So let's have a look how this can be done in both a storyboard and then also using Swift4 coding. Okay, so we're going to run Xcode, and setting up a collection view is pretty much the same as setting up a table view. So we'll create a new project. Single view app, we'll call it collection view. We will replace the one we've got there, which happened before. That looks nicer. Okay, we'll get rid of the standard view controller, and we will get rid of the launch screen, which we don't use. We'll tidy things up like we normally do. So we'll put our assets into models, and we will create a new file, which is going to be called my collection view controller of the type UI collection view controller. And we don't want to do models. So we'll create a new group called view controllers. And just like in the list view, we also need a file for the cell. So the subclass of that is going to be the UI. Doesn't like it at all. There it is there. The cell. So if we look at our storyboard, we've got a standard view controller, which we're going to get rid of. And if we go down to our little palette, we can find our collection view controller, which we can drag out onto the screen. And you can see, rather than having just a cell that goes all the way across like it does in a table view, here we have a collection, and this is a square or a rectangle, depending on what size you want it to be, and you can resize it manually, or you can go to this collection view flow layout and you can resize it there. So let's have 180 by 100, and also we want to put a label in here. Was pretty good. Give that some constraints. And the constraints are relative to within the cell. And then we'll center it vertically and horizontally. So we've got 4 cells, so it looks good. And our label itself, we want to center the text. So what we do need to do is, for the collection view controller, we need to make it go to my collection view controller. And for the cell, we need to make that go to my collection view cell. And just like the cells were working in table views, we need to use a reuse identifier. So we'll call it my cell. Okay, so we'll make the background yellow so that we can see what's going on. And that is pretty good. So let's have a look at, that's the storyboard. Let's look at what the view controller has to say. So we've got this reuse identifier type called cell, and we called it, I think, my cell. Let's check that to make sure it works. My cell, that's correct. And there are some things here. Register cell classes. It's got this self.collectionView.register. Now you might recall back to table views, you don't actually need this line if you're using the storyboard. You only need it if you are using doing it in code. So we'll bring that back later. And there's some comments about navigation that we don't need to worry about. And then there's a data source. So what do we need to do? We need a data source. So let's create an array of strings. Let cell name be an array of strings. And let's just call them, I don't know how many that is. Cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, cell 4, cell 5, cell 6, cell 7, cell 8. Okay, so number of sections, I think we can just leave that as 0. The collection view, number of items in each section. So the number of items, in fact, we might just make that 1. Because there's probably 1 section. So the number of items in the section is going to be how many items there are in our array. So that's just going to be cellname.count. And then down here we've got this cell for item out where we configure our cell. So we've already turned the cell yellow, but we've put a label in there. So what we need to do is we need an outlet for our label. And we do that by going to our split assistant editor thing and choosing not the collection view controller, but give me that one. It's got nothing in it, but we need to place an outlet. So we just control drag, and we've got an outlet. We're going to call it cell label. That's that. And then when we're back in our my collection view controller, our cell is actually going to be returning as a my collection view cell. And once we've typecast it as that, we're able to access this outlet. So it's just cell dot cell label dot text is equal to our array cell name, and we're past the index path, which is a XY coordinate, and so we will take the index path dot row, and that should pretty much do everything that we need. Let's have a look and see what goes wrong. We do have this failed to instantiate the default view controller, so we haven't selected our collection view controller and clicked on the is initial view controller in the storyboard. We'll run it again, and then we'll be able to display the collection view. And there you go, we've got our yellow cell, and for each of the 8 cells in our array, the label has been identified with the text. So essentially within the storyboard, you can put anything into these cells, but the main things you'd put would be cells or images. etc. And everything you place within the cell is going to be displayed here. And you just do the same thing. You create the outlets in the UICollectionView cell, and in the UICollectionView controller, you have to set whatever value it's going to be based on an array from your data source. So that's how it's done in Storyboard. Let's have a look at how it's done in code. Okay, so to do everything in code, first we need to get rid of the storyboard, which I've already done. Just delete it, and we need to create just a view file that we will call default. And then we just need to set that to be our launch screen so we don't get an error, it just fixes an error. And then in our did finish launching with options, we need to set the value of window equal to be a UI window with a frame equal to the UI screen, main.bounds, and then we need to make key invisible. And then we need to set the root view controller, which is the little arrow in the storyboard. Say, hey, let's run this window, and we want to set that to be my collection view controller. And if we run that, okay, so what we need to do is we need to supply this collection view layout, and you may recall that that I said you could resize the cells using the collection view layout. So we just create a variable to create a collection view layout and just pass that through. And hopefully this time it will run, but it's going to fail again because it's still got this issue with the cell. Just comment that out for the time being. Okay, so the default color is black. So here in my collection view controller, what do we need to do? Well, we definitely need to register the cells now, and we need to say collection view dot background color equals dot white, and if we run that, okay, so we've got okay, so what have I done wrong here? App delegate. Yes, the root view controller is not a UI collection view controller. It's my collection view controller. So run it again. This time it will be white. Okay, that's good. So now we've got this collection view cell. I've erased the outlet, which was the only thing in it before with the storyboard. So what we need to do is we need to override the initializer and give it a frame, and to do that we need to call super.init and pass that the frame, and then we need to set up our set up the cell. So in this cell, we need to have a label, and to do that in code, we just go cell label equals UI label, and it's going to ask us for a rect, and again we'll just use this handy little function. So we'll set it from being 20, 10 down, 50 wide, 21 high, and it's telling us here we need to use this required initializer as well. We just click fix, it does nothing except get rid of the error message. And then when we set up our cell, we're going to create this cell, but we need to add it to a subview so that it's displayed. So let's run that and see what happens. And nothing happens. Now we want to change the cell color to be yellow, and we want to put the text in the cell. So we've defined cell label now, so that should be fine. And if we go cell dot, is it view? Or is it just background color? Yes. Make that yellow. Let's run that. And what we need to do is we need to define the actual size of the cell. And you may recall in the storyboard, we clicked on that the collection view layout, and we need to have our collection view subscribe to this UICollectionView delegate flow layout, and we also need to then size collection view, that's the one. So we need to return the size of the cell, and so that is just going to be return CG size, width and height. So the width before I think was 160 and the height was 100. Now that we've got a cell size, we've got a cell color, and we've got cell text. And to figure out what I did wrong, so we don't want a UI collection view layout. We want a UI collection view flow layout, and that's one of the problems with autocomplete. And there you go. So you've got the 8 cells, they've got a yellow background, and they've got the name. Now obviously I didn't do the anchors for the label in code because I'm going to be doing a tutorial on that very soon. After I've done all these UI controls, I'm going to do an auto layout tutorial in code, and there's 2 ways of doing that. So anyway, so that's don't get trapped. Don't get trapped like I did in your app delegate when you create the UI collection view flow layout, not just the view layout, and pass that in here. In fact, we might just call it layout so that we don't get confused. In fact, we'll call it flow layout. So when we upload it, it's got the correct thing in there. And again, if you want to add a view or whatever, then you can just cell view equals UI view, chuck in a rect, and add the subview down here. Probably best not to call it cell view, etc. Probably best not to use the same rectangle as well. And then in the controller code, in the same place, here you just be able to type, cell view dot image equals, and then pass it an image from some sort of array or data structure that you've got. So as a bonus, seeing as I had a minor stuff up, I'm going to explain to you what these reusable cells are actually reusing. So essentially what happens is when either a table view or a collection view displays all these cells, it calculates how many cells it's going to need. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it could display, say, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it creates 12 cells and it uses the available data from the data source to populate those 12 cells. And then if you think about it, if you scroll those cells up just halfway, then you might have half a cell here and here, and you might also have half of cell 13 and 14 down the bottom. So it actually creates sort of, well, in a list view, n+1 cells, but in a collection view, depending on how many are going horizontally, it'll create x+1 times y cells in memory. And then as this top one finally scrolls off, then those are the two cells that get reused. So it just kills off those two in memory, and then it reuses those cells down here. And as they scroll up, they'll be calling this reuse cell or cell for item at function. So that's how reusing works. When the window's opened, it creates, say, n+1 or n+1 times y cells, and then as you're scrolling, that's when they're being reused. Anyway, that's a little bit of information for you, and that's collection views. Hey, if you're looking for a copy of the completed code, you can get a copy from GitHub. Just follow the link's just down there. Cheers. The collection view is the most flexible controller for displaying multiple items, so play around with it, as any employer is going to want you to be able to code a collection view. If you have any questions about the tutorial, then please leave a comment below or hit me up on Twitter @SwiftAlmanac. Please subscribe to the channel, it's free, and check out our website at www.swiftalmanac.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.